I'm only going to say this about 55 more times, and it is that the rise of Christian nationalism in our current state, 2020 to 2025, probably even 2016 to 2025, has happened before. And this doesn't tell you everything about them because these are two different contexts, but there are definitely similarities. And this is the 1920s. So the 1920s was rife with a kind of fear of modernity after the Russian Revolution, after World War I. There were a lot of groups of people who were afraid of change and progressive liberal politics. And so some of this even came from a fear of democratic groups, the fear from democratic groups of socialism and communism. And so even though they might not have understood it completely, they saw it as a risk, as a threat. And so that's why you saw constriction in the United States in the 1920s and even in the 1950s. But in the 1920s, you saw the rise of something called the Ku Klux Klan. Not my old job. And these were people who were, in a sense, Christian nationalists, and they are today. But in the 1920s, you saw a rise of that. And you also saw a rise of some versions of a return to original Protestantism in the United States, a return to more traditional, white, predictable, similar, homogeneous Christianity. And you saw that in the 1920s, even going into the 1930s. And then after World War II, you even saw another constriction in the 1950s as we had the fear of nuclear arms and nuclear warfare. And then, of course, today we have a same rise in Christian nationalism, a same rise in conservative politics, a same rise in acute, singular, charismatic leader type figures, even though I don't see him really as that charismatic. The point is that people like him for those reasons. And that's why this is a similar event, not based on everything being the same, but you can learn from the 1920s, 1950s, and put that into your complexification of your arguments in 2025. I hope that makes sense for the rise of Christian nationalism, know how to understand that. And there goes Bandit. Thanks for shopping.